All right, so we are going live here, and as you can see, and hopefully you already know, today's webinar is on the lost secrets of powerful immunity. So we're doing this class a little differently than we have in the past, because normally we would be doing this live at the shop, at the Natural Apothecary. This time of year, however, it gets a little bit difficult to gather a bunch of people together there. People have a lot going on with family and friends, and it's cold, and it gets dark early, and people just don't want to be bothered to go out. So we thought we'd try to make it more convenient for everyone by doing it online this time, so you can join us from anywhere. And hopefully this goes well. If it does, we'll continue to do more like this. The other nice thing about it is that we are recording this, so people will be able to watch it later, and they won't have to feel bad about missing the live one. So once again, we're talking about the lost secrets of powerful immunity, or the formula for surviving the winter intact. And there's a lot of big words in this in terms of I know I'm making a lot of big claims, right? I'm claiming that these are secrets, that they were lost, that this will give you powerful immunity. But the truth is that this stuff that I'm going to talk about really is that important today. It's really that important for you, and it really is that rare of knowledge that so many people just don't know about this. And because people don't know about this, people suffer unnecessarily. So just a little caveat before we start. I am not a medical professional. Nothing I say here should be interpreted as medical advice, and you should always consult with a healthcare professional before making any big health decisions that could affect your future. So that being said, I have learned a few things about health over the years. A big chunk of that coming from my experience going through cancer and cancer treatments. As it turns out, immunity is very tightly integrated with cancer protection and cancer survival. In addition to that, I worked as a health psychologist for years before I was diagnosed with cancer. During that time, I spent a lot of time working with people on basic health habits and creating a lifestyle that would lead to success as far as health goals go. So I have learned quite a bit about these things over the years. I learned even more while I was studying for this webinar, and hopefully the things that I've been able to gather together, the stuff that I've learned, will be really beneficial for you today. So let's talk about what we're going to learn about today. There's a lot. I do plan on trying to get through in 60 minutes. There's a decent chance that I'll go over, but luckily we're recording, so if you have to leave early, that's okay. You'll be able to come back and watch it again later. You can even review the parts that maybe you need to check again. So what we're going to cover, though, is why immunity matters, as if you need that, right? You already know. But we'll go over why that's important. We'll talk about what's called the immune triad, one of those secrets that a lot of people just don't know about, but it's so important to our immune health. We'll talk about checking for deficiencies that could be big factors in your health. Acute versus chronic immune care. The role of the thymus, kind of a random little organ that we're going to discuss today. Herbal remedies and antibacterial herbs. So we'll have a little herbal section. And then gut-based immunity. A lot of people don't realize how important the gut is to our immune health, but it is very important. And dietary and lifestyle musts, supplement quality factors, and your winter wellness kit. And as mentioned in the email that I sent out about this, there is a special offer. There's actually 2 special offers related to this class, and they do expire soon. So those of you watching this live have an advantage, but hopefully others are able to see this in time to take advantage of those deals, because they'll be going till the end of this week. So let's jump in. First, let's talk about why immunity matters. There are over 200 strains of common cold viruses, And each one of those strains is evolving very, very rapidly. When they do the vaccinations for the flu every year, which I know is not the cold virus but is related, they typically get the initial strain that they use for the vaccination from Asia, because they're hitting their cold season, their flu season, earlier than we are. The problem that they run into often, though, is that those flu strains are evolving so rapidly, but by the time they've actually got the vaccine ready, by the time flu season is hit here in the United States, the vaccine is already useless. It's addressing a flu virus that is no longer even a factor. Even if they do get the right one, like it says here, there's 200 strains of cold viruses. So getting the flu vaccine isn't going to protect you against any of those cold viruses, and there's 200 of them. But I'm getting way ahead of myself. So let's go back to why immunity matters. There are 1 billion colds per year in the U.S. 1 billion colds. I'm not sure how many people there are in the U.S. I know that it's well below 1 billion. So that means that the average person is getting sick more than once every winter. And as it turns out, on average, it's 2 to 4 colds per year. Women get sick more than men, but that's because they tend to act as caretakers to children more than men. They're the teachers, they're the stay-at-home mothers, they're the working mothers for that matter. They just tend to interact with children a lot more, so they tend to get sick a lot more. Children get sick quite a bit more than adult men and women, but I'm not going to go into that. I'll save that for a couple weeks from now when we talk about children's immunity. Cold viruses love dry, confined environments. So as you can imagine, winter is really ideal, at least where we live here in the United States, right? Especially here in Utah, it's already dry. You add cold to that, and then you keep everybody indoors where we have forced air heating, then that's kind of the perfect environment for the cold to thrive. And in fact, last year, 2017, was the worst flu season in 45 years. So I realize I keep jumping back and forth between the cold and the flu. That's because in a lot of cases, it just doesn't really matter what we're talking about. A lot of times what people think is the flu is actually some other kind of virus. A lot of times a cold virus, as it turns out. So there were 35 to 50 million cases of flu per year in the U.S. Not nearly as many as there are colds, but quite a few, right? And these flu cases led to 200,000 hospitalizations and 36,000 deaths. So it's a serious thing, not something that we should take lightly. Now, that being said, I did talk about vaccines a little bit, but vaccines are not the magic bullet that we would like them to be. They do have problems that come with them, and they do have effectiveness issues where a lot of people that get the flu vaccine get sick anyway. Now, I'm not going to go on any kind of rant about vaccines. I'm not going to tell anyone they shouldn't get a flu vaccine, but there are some things that you should be aware of before you go out and get your vaccine. The most important in my mind is that you can get up to 25 micrograms of mercury per dose when you get a flu vaccine. Now, the EPA safety limit for mercury exposure is 0.1 micrograms, which means that the dose you get from a flu vaccine is 250 times higher than the EPA's safe limit for mercury. I'm sure that they have their explanation for why that's okay in a vaccine, but I don't know what that explanation is, and it does make me nervous. In addition to that, you've got some really interesting ingredients that go into these flu vaccines, such as aluminum. There's a detergent in there. There's an antifreeze in there. For some reason, they have some ingredient that is generally used to fight STDs. A vaginal spermicide, that's a really strange one. And then sodium phosphate, which I'll be honest with you, I don't know what that is. Now, once again, I'm not trying to create unnecessary fear about the flu vaccine, but I do hope that people will consider that there are other options, that you don't have to just accept the flu vaccine as your only way to survive the winter. Nor should you expect that just because you get the flu vaccine, everything is going to go really rosy, right? So let's talk about some of the other things that there are out there. One of them is antibiotics. Antibiotics are used way, way, way more than they need to be used. And in fact, they're used in a lot of cases where they're not going to make a difference, because antibiotics are only helpful in the case of bacterial infections. Now, there are situations where you get a bacterial infection as a kind of a secondary issue when you have a cold or the flu. And in those cases, yeah, an antibiotic is going to help with that. But most instances of antibiotics being given out for colds and flus, it's not doing anything. And of course, that's leading to antibiotic-resistant diseases out there that is very dangerous for people that are very, very sick. Now, one of the biggest issues that I have with antibiotic use by doctors is that a lot of times the doctors will still prescribe an antibiotic even when they know that it's not going to help. I know that that sounds crazy, but it's because they want to be helpful, right? They want their patients to think highly of them. And if they have a patient come in that insists on getting an antibiotic, it is far too common where the doctor will just give in and give them the prescription. I know that sounds absolutely insane, but it happens all the time. There are studies proving this. Doctors will give out a prescription for antibiotics when they know it's not going to make a difference. And that is contributing to a very big problem we have in our country. Now, it's not just the antibiotics, though. It's the antibacterials. The antibacterial soaps and cleansers, they don't work. Studies show over and over again that it does not reduce the exposure you get to bad bacteria, nor does it reduce your odds of getting any kind of bacterial infection. So why are you wasting time with it? That's really the question here. And then, of course, these antibacterials, they kill bacteria, and they're kind of indiscriminate about which bacteria they kill. That means that they'll kill the good ones too. And as we're going to get to later when we start talking about the gut-based immunity, that can be really problematic if you're killing off your healthy bacteria. All right. So there are two ways that viruses, flus, and diseases try to kill you. The first is a direct assault. That's where they go in, they overwhelm your immune system, they spread their junk all over, and then they jump to another host. All right, that's the one that we're used to from the cold season. There's another more insidious way that they come in and make us sick, and that's the really slow, stealthy version that leads to chronic illness. In these cases, they evade the immune system, so it doesn't realize it's there, therefore it's not doing anything to stop it. And because of that, we get these chronic issues such as Lyme disease. By the time the symptoms start showing up, these diseases are so deeply embedded into our system that it's incredibly difficult to get rid of them. Luckily, we do have a few ways of our own to fight off these diseases. The four general approaches are to create a good nutritional foundation. We will talk about that. There are herbal remedies. There are gut-based immunity tricks, I guess. And then something called thymus reactivation. We'll talk about that a little bit. Maybe not in too much detail, though. So first off, I want to talk about the immune triad. There are three pieces of a puzzle that can make all the difference in the world when it comes to our immunity. First is calcium. Yeah, very simple, just calcium. Now, if you have the right kind of calcium in your system, it's going to do an incredible job of fighting off diseases. It does a lot of really good things for our immune system that enable the immune system to do its job better. But the calcium has to be the right kind. It has to be bioavailable. I really like calcium lactate because your body really likes that. It takes it up really well. There are types of calcium that they are so tightly bound to other things, minerals, that our body just can't do anything with them. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. The next thing on there is we'll do the essential fatty acids. So specifically, I'm talking about omega-3 fatty acids here. That's your EPA and DHA. Now, it's very important too that this come with iodine so that your body can utilize it more effectively. That iodine piece is going to get your thyroid involved in the process. That's going to help circulate these things better. But what's important about the fatty acids is that they help pull calcium into your tissues. Without the fatty acids, calcium will just float around in your bloodstream, and it's going to do good there, but it's not going to be able to fight off disease in the same way that it can if it can get into your tissues as well. So that the essential fatty acids are really important. And then the last thing is the vitamin C complex. Now, I've really highlighted the word complex here because well, we'll talk about it in a minute, but not just any old vitamin C is going to make a big difference here. But the vitamin C is important because it promotes something called phagocytosis or phagocytosis and healing. It activates the adrenals. So I can't remember if we're going to talk about phagocytosis down the line, so I'll talk about it right now. That is the process of breaking down and recycling damaged and old tissues in your body. All right. It's also the process of breaking down and destroying things that aren't supposed to be there, pathogens. So if you can imagine, if our phagocytosis system was broken, what could go wrong, right? We're going to have all kinds of buildup of debris of our own cells. We're going to have damaged cells that are just floating around in the system. We're going to have broken cells that aren't doing what they're supposed to do. That might even sound familiar because that's what cancer basically is. And then we're going to have diseases running rampant. So phagocytosis is incredibly important, and vitamin C is important to the process of phagocytosis. So let's go into that a little bit more. So vitamin C is a complex. It's not just a little simple vitamin. And what I mean by that is that it has several different parts to it. Now, the part that everybody is familiar with, whether they know it or not, is ascorbic acid. In fact, if you were to pull out your vitamin C from the medicine cabinet, and I'm sure you've got some because almost everybody has vitamin C at home, and then you look at the nutrition label. In fact, there we go. So I've got some vitamin C here. This is actually a really good one, but if you turn around your label, let's see if I can get that there, and look at the nutrition facts. There we go. Yours probably says right over here ascorbic acid. Mine does not because it's a really good vitamin C. But the FDA, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the FDA, has decided that vitamin C and ascorbic acid are synonyms, meaning that you can refer to ascorbic acid as vitamin C, and that's accepted in the medical community. However, anyone who has looked at a living vitamin C complex under a microscope, and I forgot to attach a picture of that. I've got one that some of you have seen before, but what you see is that it's a lot more complex than that. Ascorbic acid is just the shell that goes around the outside of the complex, and it acts as a protectant to the vitamin C. Now, it's important because it protects the vitamin C complex, but it's not important in the way that we think it is. If all we get is a bunch of empty shells, we're not doing our bodies any good at all. There's more that needs to go into that. And one of those parts are bioflavonoids. You may have heard of these before. In the old times, they used to refer to it as the P factor. But their job is to maintain vascular integrity. So if we don't get enough bioflavonoids, you can imagine that our veins would be a bit of a mess, right? That's how we get things like spider veins. That's how we get easy bruising, that sort of thing. We also have vitamin K in there, and vitamin K has been really big lately. In fact, there's vitamin K supplements everywhere. Newsflash for you, you don't need a vitamin K supplement, especially if you're getting a really good vitamin C supplement, or even better, you're getting a good food source of vitamin C. That's going to help to promote coagulation. That's where blood clots up, and that's really important in wound healing, and If we don't have that, then we tend to bleed a lot, and once again, that's going to lead to really easy bruising. It's going to lead to what's called hemophilia. It's not fun, and you can lose a lot of blood through things like your typical menstrual cycle. There's another piece in there called the J factor, and its job is to make sure that your blood can carry oxygen. So if you've ever done a pulse oximeter test before, that little clamp that goes on your finger, that tells you how much oxygen your blood is able to carry. Now, I can tell you that that's not enough. You can have complete saturation of oxygen in your blood and still have issues, but that's a topic for another time. For now, what I'll tell you is that if your blood oxygen saturation is really low, then it could be because you don't have enough of this J factor. And then the last piece in there is tyrosinase. Now, its job is to help convert tyrosine into different neurotransmitters. Now, dopamine, you may have heard of before because it's been referred to as the happy neurotransmitter. If we don't have enough dopamine, we tend to get depressed. It's not the only one. There's also serotonin, but it's very important to our mental well-being. And then adrenaline, I know you've heard of that before in the medical world, especially outside the United States. That's typically referred to as epinephrine, and noradrenaline. And these are really important to adrenal health and to our ability to deal with stress. So if we're low in tyrosinase, then we're going to struggle with managing stress. Our adrenals are going to get really taxed, and we're going to have a bad time, basically. So when you look at all of this as a whole, you see that there are lots and lots of things that go into a good vitamin C complex. And most supplements are only giving you that first one over there. For some reason, I can't point the right way. There we go. They're only giving you the ascorbic acid. And that is just insane to me, because what happens is not only are we not getting all the benefits of these other factors within the complex, but our body has to go and find ways to create a complete complex when we add all that ascorbic acid. And that means it has to dip into its stores of these other factors. And over time, it's going to run out of these stores. And then you're going to start seeing all of these symptoms of a deficiency of the thing that you're taking. So back in the day, vitamin C deficiency was commonly known as scurvy. It was a big deal among the sailors. And when they didn't have enough, they got very, very sick. They would have heart problems, joint problems. They bleed everywhere, including out their nose. Bowel issues. They would constantly be sick. And of course, back in the day, it usually led to death, probably through deterioration of their heart, because vitamin C is essentially a big part of your ability to hold your tissues together, right? Collagen. And so it was a big problem back then. And fortunately, through the ability to get citrus and fresh produce to people, we've been able to eradicate your really acute issues of scurvy. But what we have today is what's sometimes known as modern scurvy, and that's this very kind of low-grade scurvy that it's not big enough to really be diagnosed by a doctor. It's not well known enough to get on most people's radar, but it's very, very common. I mean, how many of you experience minor heart problems or joint problems? I know how common those are. Spider veins, right? They're everywhere. Irritable bowel syndrome, it's endemic. All these issues are so common, and what are the odds that it's because we're not getting enough complete vitamin C in our diets, right? It's probably a rampant issue. I'm sure it is. So complete vitamin C is very important. Ascorbic acid is poison. All right. If you are taking a supplement with ascorbic acid in high doses, you are going to cause problems for yourself. Okay. Don't do that. All right. Another vitamin to talk about, vitamin D. Now, vitamin D is really cool because it helps us to take calcium throughout the body. So I mentioned before that the essential fatty acids help pull calcium into our tissues. But what I didn't mention before was that we have to first get calcium into our blood by pulling it out of our gut, right? So you eat the calcium, it goes into your gut, and then vitamin D goes into the gut, grabs it, and pulls it into the bloodstream. Then it circulates through the bloodstream. The omega fatty acids grab it and pull it into the tissues. So we have our seamless, perfect calcium distribution system. In addition to that, though, vitamin D is important for a lot of other things. And I'm guessing that almost everyone watching this is taking a vitamin D supplement. It's become very in vogue, right, lately to get vitamin D supplements. And for good reason, because it's important for your bone health. It's important for tissue repair, obviously for immunity. In fact, it is more effective than the flu vaccine, according to some statistics. Right? I can't really make that claim, but I can tell you what the statistics say. They did a study where they gave vitamin D to 180 children, 140 children, I don't know, well over 100 children, and only 18 of them got the flu. Right? When they actually ran the stats and figured everything out, they announced that they had achieved an 8% absolute risk reduction in flu cases because of the vitamin D. That might not seem like a really big number, but if you compare it to the flu vaccine, we see that the flu vaccine only achieves a 1% reduction in absolute risk. All right, so based on that type of a stat, vitamin D seems to be 8 times more effective than the flu vaccine. Holy cow, right? So if you're taking a vitamin D supplement, that's probably good as long as it's a good quality vitamin D supplement. Once again, watch out for the imposters. In this case, the imposter is vitamin D2. All right, a good vitamin D is vitamin D3, and that is actually what is most common out there, fortunately. So this is from Costco. It's a really good one, vitamin D3. That will be helpful. Where you run into vitamin D2 most of the time these days is actually in the non-dairy milks. So your soy milk, your rice milk, almost all of them have vitamin D2 supplementation. And that D2 is going to mess you up just like ascorbic acid does. It's going to create a deficiency of the very thing that you think it's treating for you. So stay away from that. All right, they do make some non-dairy milks that don't have vitamin D2 in them. If you can't find one, it's best to probably just not drink any of that non-dairy milk. All right, so the relationship between vitamin D, omega-3 oil, and calcium, hopefully this is already clear. Vitamin D pulls it from the gut to the bloodstream. Essential fatty acids pull it from the bloodstream into the tissues. But you need to have a balance between them, because if you get too much of one or too little of the other, you're going to have problems. So in this case, too much vitamin D will actually create issues that look a lot like getting too little vitamin D. So what I mean by too much vitamin D is if you get too much of that, it's going to trap the calcium in your bloodstream. That means your body won't be able to pull it into the tissues, and the tissues are going to be starved of vitamin D. So it's important to get a balance there. And that means that you need to be taking plenty of omega-3s. You can get these from fish. You can get them from meat. They have it in flaxseed, but it's really such small quantities that it's probably negligible. The best source really is to just supplement it. They do make some clean, good sources of omega-3s. My favorite is cod liver oil. Do make sure that it's clean though. I like Standard Processes because they test and they do a really good job. Nordic Naturals does one as well. There are others. There's another one I'm trying to think of that's really common, but a good cod liver oil is awesome because it already has a built-in balance between vitamin D and essential fatty acids, EPA and DHA. In addition to that, it has lots of vitamin A, which is wonderful. Natural vitamin A is so great. Once again, I bet you've got a multivitamin at home that has vitamin A in it, retinol palmitate. That's a fraud. It's not good for you. Don't take it. In addition to having a really good balance of D and essential fatty acids, though, cod liver oil also has anti-inflammatory properties, mostly because of the APA and DHA in it. And it also has CoQ10, which is wonderful for a lot of different things, including heart and potentially brain health. So moving on, let's talk about zinc. And I realize I'm going kind of fast on all this is because I am way behind schedule already. I'm taking too long. I have a lot to cover. And of course, you can always follow up with me to get more detail on any of this stuff, to talk more about anything you like. So plus we've got the recording, so you can come back and reread these slides later. I'll probably upload the slides, so you'll be able to just download them and read at your leisure. But let's talk about zinc. So zinc is so important, and it is so commonly deficient in people. It's responsible for the development and function of cells that are important for immunity. It helps to create neutrophils, which are a really important white blood cell, and natural killer T cells, which literally do the killing when we've got pathogens. It's also necessary for proper macrophage function, that phagocytosis we talked about before. We need some macrophages to do that right. So we really can't have good phagocytosis without zinc. In addition, it protects against free radical damage during inflammation. All right, free radicals are not necessarily problematic unless they get out of hand, and zinc helps to prevent them from getting out of hand. Inflammation is not necessarily a problem. On an acute level, inflammation is great because that's how we clear all the junk out of our system. So it's so important that our body is able to create inflammation when it needs to. When it becomes a problem is when it becomes chronic. That's very important to know. But I'm getting off topic. So going back to zinc, when we don't have enough of it, there are a lot of telltale signs. The easiest one to really do is look at your fingernails, and if you see little white spots, that's a good sign that you probably have a zinc deficiency. In addition, though, you might notice prostate issues if you're a man, skin problems, immunity issues, obviously, wound healing that's just taking way too long, depression, menstrual issues, loss of taste and smell, infertility. Wow. And here's the kicker. Zinc is so deficient in so many people, and they don't even realize it. And what's crazy is it's so easy to test for it. You literally just put a bunch of liquid zinc in your mouth and you see what happens. So I'm going to talk about 3 different tests, and we run all of these in the office. We're starting to implement it with just about everyone that comes through because they're so easy to do and they're so helpful. But I'll start with the one in the middle, the zinc taste test. We've got some liquid zinc in the office. We give you just a little bit of it. You put it in your mouth for 10 seconds, and depending on how strong the taste is, we can tell you how deficient you are in zinc. And this is incredibly accurate. So if you do this for 10 seconds and it tastes like water the whole time, which is what happened to me the first time I did it, that means that you are severely deficient in zinc. All right. So I've had cancer, right? I've gone through cancer treatments. I've been working really hard on my immune health. And even after all that time, I did the zinc taste test and I was severely deficient in zinc. Do you realize how scary that was for me? So I've been taking a zinc supplement for quite a while now. And now I'm to the point where I can actually taste it. It's not strong and immediate. It's slightly delayed and moderate, which means I still have a way to go. I'm still catching up. That's how long it can take to get your zinc levels back up. I've been doing this now for 6 months, maybe 4 months, 5 months, somewhere in that range, and I'm still not quite where I need to be with my zinc. So this is an important thing that you need to jump on soon, especially now that we're headed into winter and cold and flu season, right? Another test is the calcium cuff test. That's where we put a blood pressure cuff on your calf and we start pumping it up. And depending on when you start to feel discomfort and the beginnings of a cramp, that tells us how calcium deficient you might be. As I've already talked about, calcium is incredibly important to immunity. It's part of the immune triad. And so it's important to make sure that you have enough calcium. And, of course, that omega fatty acid, what used to be known as vitamin F. A lot of times we can actually fix a calcium cuff deficiency in just a couple of minutes by having someone take some omega fatty acids right there in the office. But thing is, you got to chew it up. And we'll see improvement right away. If we don't, then we start adding the calcium in. But it's just really cool. We can do that so quickly, so easily. And then the last test we've got here is what's called Trousseau's sign test for vitamin D. So what we do there is we put the blood pressure cuff on your arm as usual. We find your systolic blood pressure, which is the top number. And then we pump up the cuff to 20 millimeters of mercury above, I don't know if I said that right, anyway, above your systolic pressure, and we leave it there for a few minutes. And if you are vitamin D deficient, then what happens is you start to get this involuntary spasm in your brachial nerve, like that, and you can't stop yourself from doing it. It doesn't hurt, it's not uncomfortable, you just can't stop doing it, which is kind of weird. And if that happens, that means that we do have a vitamin D deficiency, and you probably need to supplement a bit with the vitamin D. So 3 quick tests that can help us make some really quick decisions about supplementation. It's really awesome. Come by, do it. We love doing it. It's easy and it's fun. All right. Acute and chronic immune care. So for acute immune issues, that means that you've got a cold, you've got the flu, you've got symptoms going on. Things that you're going to need: vitamin A, whole food vitamin A, right? None of that retinol palmitate junk. Vitamin C, none of that ascorbic acid junk. Calcium, magnesium, omega-3 fatty acids, also known as EPA and DHA, and mushrooms, buckwheat, carrots, alfalfa, ribonucleic acid, right? All this stuff is super, super important to your immediate immune health. If you are dealing with symptoms, these are the things that are going to help you the fastest when it comes to your diet. So eat foods that have lots of vitamin A, vitamin C, calcium, magnesium, omega fatty acids, mushrooms, buckwheat, carrots, alfalfa, RNA. And if you need something faster, we do have product recommendations we can make for you. I'll talk about some of these later, but for now, just know that's what you're dealing with. Now, on a chronic level, there's a lot more that goes into that. Vitamin A still, vitamin C still, vitamin E, very important. Do not do a synthetic vitamin E. The B complex, also very, very important, and that's all the Bs, right? B6, B12, B1, B niacin, B thiamine, all those things, inositol. That's going to be really important to your long-term immune health. And then the minerals that you need: iron, zinc, selenium, copper, chromium. We can test for zinc real easily, right? Some of these others are trickier. We don't have a quick functional test we can do in the office. We are bringing in hair mineral testing though, and I'm hoping to be able to start that by the beginning of next year in January. Really, the important thing is get plenty of those. Those are the good minerals that are going to help your immune health in the long term, right? Help fight chronic immune diseases. And then food-wise, things like thymus, liver, spleen, and bone. Sounds delicious, right? But as it turns out, the liver meats really are the best of the meats. So bone, fortunately, you can get from bone broth, and bone broth is delicious. Maybe we'll talk about that more. Probably not. Janique has some really good videos on her Gutsy Mama Instagram page. If you want to get a link to those, just let me know. I can direct you that way. But she has an incredible bone broth system that she does, and it's delicious and it's so good for you. All right, let's talk about the thymus. This little gland is magical, and it's always imperiled. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So it's near the thyroid. You've got this little picture up there. It's just below the thyroid, and it's made of lymphoid tissue, like lymph nodes. It's often referred to as the master immune gland. So you can imagine how important it is to the immune system, right? If it's not functioning properly, you're going to have a bad day. You're going to get sick a lot. But in particular, it's important to the lymphocytic function of the body. Don't worry about that. That's your white blood cells and things like that. But it also promotes phagocytic activity. We keep talking about that word, phagocytosis. Seems like it's really important, doesn't it? And it's important to the cleanup of the body. So if we don't have that working properly, then we're going to run into all kinds of issues like autoimmune disease, which is terrible, chronic skin disease, bone marrow failure, recurrent infection, hepatitis, allergies, cancer, right? I'm taking a lot of thymus gland right now to fight cancer. And then actually having a really well-functioning thymus can help minimize chemo side effects, which is kind of cool. They are actually doing a lot of studies looking at thymus as a supplement, and they're seeing some promising results with things like allergies and asthma, stuff we've talked about, cancer, cardiomyopathy, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, HIV and AIDS, liver disease, lupus and tuberculosis. I mean, some really fascinating stuff coming out of it. Now, more research is needed, right? There's no definitive research showing, yes, thymus gland as a supplement is going to make such a big difference for all these immune things. But based on the theories that we've got, based on the initial promising results, makes me pretty confident. They're also in the future going to start looking at potentially using these thymus supplements for rheumatoid arthritis, warts, urinary tract infections, psoriasis and eczema, alopecia, appendicitis. I mean, a lot of stuff that most people think there's nothing you can do about them, that they're just bad genes and you're stuck with it for the rest of your life. There's hope. There's hope, my friends. So over time, your thymus deteriorates. It over time gets replaced by fat and connective tissue, which is not nearly as effective at fighting off disease as the thymus gland. But fortunately, there are ways to kind of reactivate it. We call it glandular therapy. That means eating a lot of glands. So thymus supplements, right? The one that I take is called Thymex. It's from Standard Process. It's a thymus cytosol extract, which basically means it comes from the thymus. Also, desiccated spleen, bone calcium, sesame seed oil, boswellia, turmeric, and a clean diet. So if you think that this might apply to you, that maybe you could use a little thymus reactivation, come and talk to us, and we will put you on our thymus reactivation protocol. We've got all the supplements that you would need for that. We've got the program. There's actually 2 phases to it. We've got an initial phase where we just load you up with this thymus extract. And then we have a follow-up phase that takes quite a bit longer. It's like 6 to 12 months as opposed to 45 days, where we're just maintaining the whole thing and keeping the thymus strong. But it can make a huge difference if you've had some of these issues over here, the skin disease, the bone marrow failure, autoimmune stuff, recurrent infection, hepatitis, allergies, cancer. It might be worth doing this thymus reactivation. I'm going through it myself right now, and I can't yet report anything. It's too soon to tell, but I'm hopeful. So let's talk about herbal remedies. I don't have time to go into the details of why each of these different herbs does what it does. I don't have time to really spend talking about any of them at all, other than to tell you what they are, right? So if you've got an acute infection, your big 3, the trinity of acute infection, is Andrographis, Echinacea, and Tulsi, or holy basil. For respiratory tract infections and coughing, licorice, pleurisy root, echinacea, horehound, ginger, thyme essential oil. I'm thinking I'm not going to just go through all of these. You're going to have access to the slides and the recording, so you can come back and look at all of these as you need to. The only one that I will mention here is at the bottom, the upper respiratory infections and gastrointestinal issues, including SIBO, which is small intestinal bowel overgrowth. That's where you have too much bacteria growing in your small intestine, and it's the bad bacteria, and it's awful, creates a lot of discomfort and makes all the foods bad for you. Garlic is your best friend, but here's the trick. It needs to be enteric coated garlic, otherwise it's going to stop in your stomach and get digested. So a good enteric coated garlic, such as garlic forte, which comes from MediHerb, that's going to get down into your gut, and it's going to do wonderful, wonderful things for fighting off these gastrointestinal issues. Now, it's not going to be the magic bullet for all GI tract problems, but it's going to help a lot. So that's your magical herb. We'll do another class on digestive health at some point in the future, or maybe we'll even focus specifically on some of these things like SIBO, but garlic forte for now. That's an important one to know. If, on the other hand, by the way, you've got something like H. pylori, garlic is still your friend, but you're going to want to just do a regular garlic. There are garlic supplements that are less garlicky, right? They're not going to give you the garlic breath or the seeping garlic out your pores thing. Standard Process does make one of those, but I mean, they're pretty common. Garlic's helpful for H. pylori. That's what matters there. All right, antibacterial herbs. Speaking of, these antibacterial herbs are awesome because they act like prescription antibiotics, but they're smarter, right? Prescription antibiotics kill everything. And in fact, if you are on a round of antibiotics, you've recently been on a round of antibiotics, you have 3 to 7 days after completion of the round of antibiotics to fix your bacteria in your gut before it becomes a really big problem for you. 3 to 7 days. So that means you need to jump on it right away. Come talk to us if you are one of those people. We will get you on something. We will fix your problems. Now, antibacterial herbs, on the other hand, can kill just like antibiotics do, but they don't kill indiscriminately. They focus on the bad stuff. They also tend to only be active in the gut, places where the urine gets to, which is, your kidneys, things like that, the mouth, and the lungs. So if you've got gut bacteria issues such as H. pylori, right? Oregano, anise essential oil, berberine, garlic, those are your friends. For mouth bacterial issues, sage, gargle sage, that's all you gotta do. Respiratory tract, garlic, right? Respiratory tract and the small intestine, garlic. You don't have to do the enteric coated if it's your respiratory tract. Just, I literally will just chop up bulbs of garlic and swallow it. It does give you nasty garlic breath though. Your partner, your family, they won't want to be near you, but you'll feel better, so maybe it's worth it. All right, if you've got stomach issues, sage again, that's your friend. And then regardless of which of these antibacterial herbs you're doing, you want to also be doing echinacea and milk thistle, because those really help to activate all of the other herbs. Echinacea is like the queen mother of the immune herbs. It's amazing. All right, gut-based immunity. So 70 to 90% of the immune system is in the gut. All right, I've heard different statistics, different places, so I figure it's somewhere in that range of 70 to 90%. That is huge, right? And it is so common for people to have gut problems in this day and age. So many people struggle with it because our food chain is broken. We're getting way too many artificial foods. We're getting way too many processed foods and too much sugar, too much junk. We're not getting enough fresh food. We're not getting enough whole, complete foods, and it's all falling apart, falling to pieces, falling apart, however you want to say it. It's a problem. So our gut is so important to our immune health, and a weak gut means a weak immune system. So with all these gut issues we've got, we're also hurting our ability to fight off disease. Therefore, a properly functioning gut is important to a properly functioning immune system, and a properly functioning gut needs healthy probiotic balance. So we're going to talk about probiotics, right? It's not that complicated, but first let's talk about leaky gut. So what leaky gut is we have our lining of our intestines, right? It's made up of all of these intestinal cells. There's a word for them that for some reason isn't coming to me right now. Colonocytes. Thank you. That's the word, colonocytes. And they have these teeny tiny gaps. They're like 2 to 3 microns big, which is basically non-existent. And that's what keeps all of the stuff in our intestines from leaking out into the rest of our body. But through issues that involve like too much caffeine, too much sugar, actually gluten contains a thing called zonulin, and that also, it opens up those gaps between the colonocytes. NSAIDs, so if you're big on ibuprofen, yikes, or if you take birth control pills or antidepressants, all of those things, they open up the gaps between those colonocytes, and that lets pretty much everything leak out of your intestines into your bloodstream in your body. And guess what happens when you get foreign objects in your bloodstream? That's right. Your immune system goes nuts. It starts to develop antibodies against that, and you start to develop all kinds of autoimmune problems, and it's because of this leaky gut. In addition to that, food allergies. Now think about that for a second. Our immune system creates antibodies against DNA because it doesn't want DNA mixing with its own DNA and creating mutant cells, right? So anytime it sees DNA in the bloodstream, it's going to create an antibody against that. So let's say you eat a peach, right? And let's say that little particles of that peach leak out into your bloodstream. And now you've got these little tiny peach DNA particles floating around your bloodstream. Your body doesn't want you to start developing little peach cells, so it creates antibodies against that peach. And then what happens? Every time you eat a peach, your immune system flares up, and you've got yourself a peach allergy. 80 to 90% of food allergies come from this leaky gut phenomenon. Now, I've been told by a teacher of mine that if you got one food allergy, that might be genetic. But if you have more than one food allergy, there is a pretty good chance that leaky gut is involved. Yikes, right? Especially if you're guilty of one of these causes here, like coffee, alcohol, sugar, ibuprofen, Advil, birth control, antidepressants, right? That's a lot of America right there. There's a treatment though, luckily. Anastar essential oil, andrographis again, philodendron bark, and oregano leaf essential oil. That can make a big difference if you fix the lifestyle factors. You can't keep eating junk and take these things and think that your gut's going to just seal itself up, all right? And in fact, sealing the gut is just the first step. You then have to restore the gut flora because they're a little bit of a mess, right? It's going to take a little bit of time. Once again, come and see us. We can tell you more about that. All right, let's talk about pH balance. So I know you've probably heard before the concept of alkalize or die, right? That we need our bodies to be alkaline because that's what kills off disease. That's not true. I'm not sure where that concept came from, but it is so wrong because many pathogens actually prefer an alkaline environment, including Staphylococcus, the bacteria that's responsible for tetanus, strep, like strep throat, right? Diphtheria, influenza, meningococcus, meningitis. Have you heard of that? Yep. It likes an alkaline environment. Pneumococcus, pneumonia. Heard of that? So, all of these things prefer an alkaline environment. So why on earth would we want to make our body more alkaline and more conducive to their growth? That's a terrible idea. That being said, we don't want our body to get too acidic either. There is a kind of an optimal range of pH for all the different parts of our body. But here's the kicker. Not all the parts of our body want the same pH, right? The pH in our colon is not going to be the same as the pH in our stomach or the pH in our small intestine. So the key here, because our focus is on immune health, is, and at this moment we're kind of talking about our gut-based immunity, we actually want to make our colon acidic, believe it or not. All right. Maybe you've heard of coffee enemas. I know that this isn't their primary purpose, but coffee enemas do create an acidic environment in the colon, and they are wonderful for fighting off disease. If you don't know what that is, you can come talk to me about it later. I'll tell you all about it. It's very fascinating. Quite the adventure. So we need an acidic environment in order to fight infection and regulate bad bacteria. All right. And fortunately, there's some healthy ways to get an acidic environment. And you don't even have to put coffee up your butt. Isn't that great? Lactic acid bacteria are going to be really key here. What they do is they turn carbohydrates into lactic acid, which our body can then use to be more acidic and kill off these bacteria, and then it flushes it out. Fermented foods, so things like apple cider vinegar or kimchi or sauerkraut or pickles, right? Fermented foods are so good for you. I'm about to show you a recipe that's going to just blow your socks off. But all these things, they help to create an acidic environment in the colon and in the gut, which is going to actually fight off disease. So the master tonic, this thing is intense, all right? You get some garlic, you get some onion, you get some ginger, you get some horseradish, you get some hot peppers, and you get some raw apple cider vinegar. The instructions you'll find online will tell you to kind of chop them up, throw them into a sort of a stewy soup, and then shake it up, things like that, let it sit, and then strain it. No. I want you to go hardcore with this. I want you to throw all of that stuff into a blender, and I want you to liquefy it so that it is a nice thick consistency. And then you put that into a mason jar, you seal it up, shake it once a day for a couple of weeks, and then enjoy. You're going to have a little bit every day. It is going to just wake you right up. It's going to wake up every square inch of your bowels. And it's going to be rough, but you are going to get tough because of it, and it is going to make your gut so powerful, strong, and your immune system is going to be so grateful for it. All right. So there that is. You can come back to this if you need the recipe later, but do try it. Try it. You won't be sorry. All right. Let's talk about dietary and lifestyle habits. All right, these are so important to your gut health. In fact, even though I'm not talking about it till the end, this is probably the most important thing when it comes to immunity. All right, what you do on a daily basis, not the supplements you take, but the things you take into your body during meals, the things you do to your body between meals will make all the difference in the world to your immunity. So let's start first with the diet. Things like unsweetened live yogurt. All right, I'm not talking about the Dannon with the little chopped fruit and sugar all up in it. That stuff is garbage. Don't waste your time with it. You want the unsweetened stuff, and you want it to be live. You want it to have live cultures in it. In fact, if you can find someone who does their own and get some yogurt from them, that is the good stuff. It doesn't taste good, not to most people, but it is so good for you. And in fact, as we'll get to in a minute, you can add some raw honey to that, and that'll make it taste awesome. And then you're getting a double shot of awesomeness. Mushrooms, specifically raw mushrooms. Now, I'll be honest here, I've never done raw mushrooms. It sounds really gross. But I was told that if you throw it into your smoothies, you won't even know it's there. And those raw mushrooms are going to give you all kinds of really great benefits, such as the P factor that I mentioned before, which is really good for your blood vessel health, basically, among other things. Bone broth, so delicious. Like I said, Janique's got an awesome recipe for bone broth. She'll tell you all about it on her Instagram, Gutsy Mom page. Berries. Berries are the best fruit, especially blueberries, especially wild blueberries, especially organic wild blueberries. Raw honey I talked about, and then pumpkin seeds. Who knew? right? Obviously, there are other foods that are good, but these are really, really key foods. There you go. If you want to boost your immune health. So get lots of those things into your health. And of course, the fermented foods that we mentioned before. We should do a class on fermentation. We're going to do a class on fermentation soon as we've figured out our own system a little better. Lifestyle. Let's talk about lifestyle factors. Eat clean, unprocessed, low sugar diets. That should go without saying. No matter what topic we're discussing, getting rid of junk sugar is so important. And specifically, I'm talking about processed sugar, right? There are natural sugars in berries, in honey, all of that. Do that in moderation, you're going to be just fine. But there is never, ever, ever a safe amount of white table sugar, right? That stuff is just pure poison. Don't do it. Processed foods, also not so great for you. This one's harder for me. There's this hippies thing. It's made from garbanzo beans, some kind of beans, and they basically turn them into Cheetos. They're incredible. They're vegan. Isn't that wonderful? They're terrible for you. That basically is just sugar. Don't do it. Don't do processed foods. Reduce your alcohol and caffeine use. This, you might feel like it's impossible to completely do this, but as much as you can, cut them down. You don't need caffeine that much. You don't need alcohol. Your friends might tell you you do, but you don't. Exercise every day. I know that one should also be obvious, but if you can focus on resistance training, now here's a little secret. Get yourself one of those little mini trampolines. They call them rebounders. They're not that expensive. You can get one for like $50 and put that somewhere in your house. Bounce on it every day. That is going to do wonders for your immunity. It helps your lymph system move, which clears out all the garbage from your body. You will be so glad you did that. And it's so easy. It makes it so convenient. But if you can lift weights, that's even better. Do some squats, do some push-ups, pull-ups. I don't care. Get some resistance training in. It's going to be so good for you. And then get sleep. Now, I'm terrible at this. All right, I was preparing this class at 1 o'clock in the morning last night. So I'm a hypocrite when I say this, but I know that I'm not doing it right. You need 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night minimum. All right. I probably need more than that right now. So I'm going to work on that. That's my goal for the next couple of weeks, is to get to bed earlier so that I can sleep more. I'd like you to do the same if you're not getting at least 7 to 8 hours and feeling rested. And then deal with your stress. Meditation is your friend. Mindfulness is your friend. But don't let your stress control your life, because it will destroy your immune system. All right, that's something that I've also had to deal with in my own life as I've dealt with cancer. Dealing with stress has been one of the hardest parts for me. Figuring out healthy ways to manage stress so that it's not pulling me all over the place. And then get a good humidifier for your house. All right, remember, those viruses love a dry environment. So if you can put a good humidifier, and really just about any humidifier is going to be great. Keep it clean. Don't let that thing get moldy. You're going to have other issues. But it's going to make a huge difference this winter. All right, real quick, let's talk about supplement quality. The best policy: don't rely on supplements for all of your health needs, okay? That is terrible. Supplements should be supplements. Your food should be your medicine first. Okay, so that being said, when you do take supplements, don't touch the synthetic junk, all right? Don't touch it. If you have questions about whether the stuff you have is synthetic, bring it to me. I will tell you. I will tell you. Don't do isolates. What I mean by that is you can start with a food and you can pull out a very tiny, tiny piece of that is incomplete, and you can say, hey, look, it's from a whole food, but it's still an isolated particle. That's no good. Don't do that, all right? You don't need that. Let's see the next one here. Use well-researched, proven supplements. What I mean by that is they do matter. Which ones you use do matter. And at the Natural Apothecary, we try to carry the stuff that is really good, the stuff that's proven. We're still working on that. We do have some in there that personally I don't agree with, and hopefully over time we'll be refining our selection so that we're only offering you the stuff that we can 100% stand behind. But don't just jump out there and use whatever weird thing is thrown in your face, okay? And then lastly, strength matters. That means many natural supplements, while they are natural, they are food-derived, whole food, all that wonderful stuff, they're just weak. And in order to get any kind of good effect from them, you'd have to take ridiculous amounts. You don't want that. So don't do that. So like I said, I am happy to consult on supplements anytime. I spend ridiculous amounts of time thinking about this and studying this, so I have some opinions. I hopefully have some wisdom on it. I'm happy to go through your supplements with you and help you figure it out. All right. Here's the first offer. I've got two offers, like I said. The first offer is, I have thrown so many different supplements at you, right? And herbs for that matter. And it's probably a little bit overwhelming for you to try to figure out what you're actually supposed to do. So I want to make it easy. I put together these packages of what I consider the essentials. I should say what my teachers consider the essentials for your immune health. They've got the why is this so hard? The daily immune support stuff over there on the left side of the screen. And then on the right side of the screen, we've got the actual acute infection, right? This is when you're dealing with symptoms right now. The stuff that's on the daily, you're taking that every day, even if you're healthy, right? Because we want to keep you healthy. The stuff on the right for the acute conditions, that's what you keep in the medicine cabinet for when symptoms arise. And if you've got these things available and you can start taking them at the first sign of issues, you might be able to actually stop those issues from turning into a full-blown cold or flu. Or if it still does, you can severely minimize the amount of suffering that you go through and the amount of time that you do suffer. So we've got this wonderful package. There's, I believe, 9 products in total. Normally it would cost $355 for these, and keep in mind that these are the absolute best herbs out there. All right, not all of them are herbs. All the products are really good, but when it comes to herbs, there are no better herbs in the world than these. $355. But for the special here, I'm dropping the price by almost 15%, 13%. Save $45, $310 for the whole package. If you're interested in that, let us know. Come by, call us, whatever. We'll get the package put together and sent to you, or I guess we'll make sure we get it to the shop for you. You'll save 13%, $45, and you and your family will stay healthy through the winter, which is a good deal. The other deal, we're bringing back the Hockert special offer for people that watch this. A lot of you know that in October we did a deal where we were selling 3 Hockett sessions for $100. For those of you that don't know, the Hockett is an ozone steam sauna with a built-in infrared sauna and electrotherapy. All these three things in one. I don't have time to explain in any more detail about that, but it is amazing, and we have had several people actually circumvent oncoming colds and flus by jumping in the Hockett early enough. It's amazing. We've had people shorten the length of time that they were sick. And 3 for $100 is an incredible deal. Normally we charge, well, our list price is $125 a session, but most people will pay somewhere around $75 a session. You're getting it for $33.33 per session. That's awesome. If you want that, you can go to this link up here, link.provohealth.com/Hockett3. And you can check out right there online. If you don't want to do that, you can come to the shop. We'll take care of you there. So, that was a whirlwind. We covered a lot of stuff today. I know you're going to love having the slides so you can go back and review it. I know that you might enjoy having the recording so you can listen to me go on about this over and over again. But if you have questions for me, best way to reach me in the immediate term is the phone, 801-810-1420. That rings straight to my cell phone and Janique's, so you might get her, you might get me. If we don't answer, I can usually get back to you within a day or two. Or maybe the more reliable method is to email me at tristan@provohealth.com. I'm actually a little bit better at getting back to those, but it can take me a day, just depending on how many emails I get. And of course, you are always welcome to come into the shop and talk to us. We are located inside of the Natural Apothecary, which is found at 1371 South State Street in Orem, Utah. That is right next door to Sprouts. And we're always happy to chat and consult and help you get scheduled for more information. We can do those tests for you. There's a lot of good stuff. So thank you for signing up for this webinar. Thank you for watching. And especially if you made it all the way to the end, thanks for sticking around. I went over time like I thought. It's officially been 70 minutes. But hopefully it was worthwhile. Hopefully you got a lot of really good information out of this. And of course, any questions, get in touch with me. Happy to talk to you about them. All right. You are wonderful. Have a wonderful evening.